If darkness was a harsh destiny, then the arrival of an angel was enough to slow it down, to lift its gaze, and to tremble in silence. Perhaps from that very moment, the heart already knew it could never turn back. Part 1. The Promise Under the Mango Tree. It began with a summer afternoon, when the air smelled of salt and ripe fruit. The Torres estate was known for its gardens. Old stone walls carried the marks of colonial times, and in the middle of the yard there stood a tall mango tree. Its branches spread wide like an open umbrella, heavy with leaves and golden fruit. Beyond the tree, the sea stretched out, waves rolling in a steady rhythm. The sound was soft, a whisper against the shore, almost like a lullaby. Ethan stepped into this garden for the first time. He felt the heat of the sun pressing on his shoulders and the cool shade under the tree wrapping around him. The world seemed to pause, only the cicadas sang, a chorus of sharp notes rising and falling. Somewhere nearby, the smell of grilled corn mixed with the sweetness of mango. Near the roots of the tree was Noah. He was quiet, still, almost like a statue set in the shade. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the line between sky and sea blurred into one. There was a weight in his posture, a distance that made him look older than his age. Ethan sensed that silence and felt the urge to break it. His own heart thumped with a mix of shyness and curiosity. He picked up a fallen mango and brushed the dust away. The skin was rough, green mixed with yellow. For a moment he imagined the taste, sour at first then slowly sweet. He thought of sharing that fruit, of making a bridge from his world into Noah's. The thought made him smile, and without planning he let out a small laugh. It was awkward and light, yet it seemed to ripple through the heavy air. Noah turned his head, just slightly, and for the first time their eyes met. In that gaze Ethan noticed something soft, hidden beneath the cold shell. It was only a flicker, a tiny spark, but it stayed with him. Days passed, and Ethan kept returning to the garden. He brought simple stories, sometimes silly, sometimes full of excitement about things he had read or seen in town. He spoke of the sound of church bells echoing through narrow streets, of the history of galleons that once sailed the waters of Manila Bay, of the quiet courage of people who worked in the fields. He knew his words were clumsy, but he wanted to fill the silence. Noah listened. He rarely spoke, but his eyes no longer looked away. Slowly, almost without noticing, the distance between them began to shrink. Ethan became the one who could cross the wall Noah had built around himself. The garden, once filled with only the rustle of leaves and the hum of insects, now carried the rhythm of two boys breathing side by side. One afternoon, Ethan placed a piece of chocolate on Noah's palm. It was slightly melted from the heat, wrapped in silver paper that caught the sunlight. The gift was small, almost careless, yet in that moment it meant more than any treasure. Noah stared at it, surprised, and then something shifted in his face. His lips curved into the faintest smile, and his eyes softened like clouds breaking after rain. The world around them seemed to join in. A bird took off from the branches above, its wings fluttering with a rush of sound. A fruit fell to the ground with a dull thud, releasing a sweet aroma. The sea in the distance sparkled brighter, as if touched by hidden light. Evening came slowly. The sky turned from gold to orange, then to deep purple. The boys walked toward the beach, their steps leaving marks on the sand that the tide would soon erase. They sat together near the water's edge. The waves rolled in with a hush, then pulled back with a sigh. The rhythm was steady, comforting, like the beating of a giant heart. Ethan felt the cool spray on his skin, the sticky grains of sand between his fingers. He looked at Noah beside him, the boy who once seemed unreachable. There was peace in the silence now, not distance. In the glow of dusk, words formed in their hearts even before they were spoken. They made a promise, simple and naive, born of youth but heavy with fate. They swore never to leave each other, never to let the sea or time pull them apart. History was moving outside their small world. The country was living through change, the echoes of the Spanish-American War still lingering in memory, the steps toward a new century quickening. Old estates like the Torres mansion carried stories of trade and power, of ships that had crossed oceans. Yet beneath the mango tree and on the shore of the quiet bay, two boys wrote a different kind of history, one that belonged only to them. The night grew deeper. Stars appeared one by one, scattered across the dark sky like grains of salt. The sound of waves softened, a low murmur. Ethan leaned back, letting the cool night air wash over him. Noah sat close, his presence solid and quiet. The promise they had made hung in the air, invisible but unbreakable. The world outside might shift, empires might rise and fall, but under the mango tree and beside the sea, a bond had been formed. It was tender, fragile, yet strong enough to last beyond that summer. And when the final breeze of the day swept across the garden, carrying the scent of ripe fruit and the hush of waves, the high school settled into stillness. It started with the ringing of a school bell, sharp and bright like a bird's cry in the morning air. Years had passed since the first meeting under the mango tree. Ethan and Noah were no longer children running through gardens and chasing the tide. They had stepped into high school, into a world filled with chalk dust, uniforms, and the quiet hum of ambition. Yet from the first day of class, they remained side by side. Same desk, same notebooks, same glances exchanged in silence. They became a pair in the eyes of everyone, two figures moving together through the rhythm of school life. The building itself carried history. Its tall windows and thick walls had stood since the American administration had built schools across Guam and the islands. Old wood creaked beneath their feet, and on rainy afternoons the roof echoed with steady taps, a percussion of water against tin. Inside, the air often smelled of ink, of damp paper, of polished floors warmed by the sun. Ethan shone in this setting. He was bright, eager, quick to answer, and quick to smile. Letters began to slip into his desk drawer, folded neatly with hearts or careful handwriting. He would find them during breaks, sometimes with pressed flowers inside, sometimes with a sweet piece of candy tucked in the crease. The attention was innocent yet constant, and it stirred something unspoken in Noah. Noah kept his silence, but inside his chest a storm gathered. His eyes followed every letter, every smile sent Ethan's way. Jealousy was a word too sharp, but it was there, hidden in the tightening of his jaw, in the way his fingers curled around the edge of his book. To the world he remained the quiet one, distant and calm. But deep within he felt a weight pressing down, the fear of losing the one person who had ever broken his walls. One evening, Ethan returned home late from school. His mother, strict and weary from long hours of work, scolded him sharply. The words came fast and heavy, like rain pelting against glass. Ethan stood there, shrinking under the weight of her anger, his own chest tight with helplessness. In that moment, Noah stepped forward. His presence was firm, his tone steady though his hands trembled. He shielded Ethan not with fists, but with quiet defiance, showing that Ethan was not alone. It was then that Ethan realized Noah's place in his life was not ordinary. It was deeper, like a root that could not be pulled away. The next days in school carried a strange glow. The bond between them felt stronger, even if no one could explain why. Friends teased them lightly, whispering in the halls that they were inseparable, that they were like two halves of the same shadow. Ethan laughed it off, his cheeks burning, while Noah lowered his gaze, hiding emotions he could not put into words. Caleb, a classmate with an open heart, noticed the quiet storm inside Noah. He tried to guide him, suggesting that Noah should talk to more people, join in games, share his time more freely. But Noah resisted. His world had narrowed, not in weakness, but in choice. To him, Ethan was enough. He did not need a circle of faces. He only needed the one who had sat beside him since the first day. Seasons turned, and the rhythm of school life went on. Pages of textbooks filled with notes. Exams came and went, chalk scraped on the blackboard with a screeching sound. Yet the highlight of Noah's days was simple. The soft brush of Ethan's shoulder against his own as they bent over the same desk. The faint smell of Ethan's soap mixed with the ink of pens. The quiet comfort of not being alone. But silence could not hold everything. The more Noah tried to keep his feelings hidden, the more they grew. One afternoon, under the bright sky of Guam where palm trees swayed in the breeze, the emotions broke through. Ethan was surrounded by friends, laughter spilling in bursts, the clatter of shoes on the cement yard loud and careless. Noah stood on the side, heart heavy, eyes clouded. Fear and longing twisted together until he could not hold it anymore. He stepped forward and reached out. His hand closed around Ethan's, firm but trembling. The skin was warm, the pulse quick beneath his touch. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The noise of the schoolyard faded, replaced by the rushing sound of blood in his ears, by the beating of his own heart like a drum. His lips moved, and the words came out raw, unplanned, heavy with truth. He whispered that Ethan was all he had. That moment burned itself into memory. Not for drama or spectacle, but for its quiet intensity. It was a confession without speeches, a truth laid bare in a simple touch. History around them kept moving. The island was shaping itself under the influence of America, new schools rising, roads being paved, ships docking in Opera Harbor with supplies and news from afar. Radios carried foreign voices, while the local people balanced traditions with change. Yet for Ethan and Noah, the world shrank into the space of one hand holding another in a schoolyard, into the echo of a single vulnerable phrase. The sun dipped lower, the shadows lengthened, and the air grew cooler. The laughter of their classmates carried in the distance, mixed with the chirping of crickets hiding in the grass. Ethan looked down at their hands, felt the tremor in Noah's grip, and something inside him stirred. It was not fear nor burden, but a realization of how much he mattered to someone who rarely spoke. That night the memory followed him home. He lay in bed listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the faint crash of waves against the shore. His chest felt both heavy and warm, as if the tide of his life had shifted. The bond had always been there, unspoken, visible to others yet unnamed by them. Now it had revealed itself more clearly. The days ahead would still be filled with lessons, exams, and the hum of everyday life. But beneath it all, something deeper had taken root. And when sleep finally came, it came with calmness, like waves rolling gently on the sand, like the steady breath of someone resting after a long day. The bond of youth held them close, silent yet unshakable, under the wide island sky. It began with the sound of footsteps echoing in wide hallways. By the time they reached their final years of high school, Ethan's life had shifted. He had become a leader in class, active in clubs, drawn into school events, and surrounded by new friends. His days were filled with schedules, meetings, rehearsals, and projects that stretched late into the evening. The once quiet rhythm of lessons and shared desks now carried a faster beat, loud and demanding. Noah felt at first as a faint distance, like a small crack in glass. At first it was nothing, just a missed afternoon together, a story that Ethan forgot to tell, a new group of faces sitting close during lunch. But the crack spread. He watched as Ethan laughed more with others, his voice blending with the crowd, his time pulled away. The space between them grew like a tide that slowly erased the marks they had once left on the sand. Inside Noah, silence turned heavy. The jealousy that had been quiet in earlier years now burned with a sharper edge. He remembered the promise made under the mango tree, the simple vow never to leave. Yet now, as he watched Ethan move further into the world, that promise felt like it was fading into air. One evening the weight broke through. The air was thick, the schoolyard buzzing with cicadas. Noah's voice, normally steady and low, cracked under emotion. He accused Ethan of forgetting. The words rang sharp, like a bell struck too hard. Ethan froze, his mind rushing but empty. He wanted to explain, to say that his heart had never turned away, but the words tangled inside him. He stood still, stunned, while Noah's eyes burned with hurt. The argument left the air shattered. Their bond, once quiet and strong, now trembled like glass about to break. Ethan carried the echo home, his chest heavy. He tried to write a letter, to reach out, but his pen stopped halfway across the page. Nothing seemed enough. The weeks that followed moved like a storm. Exams loomed, graduation events filled the calendar, and Ethan was swept into the current of responsibilities. Noah became harder to find. His seat beside Ethan felt colder, his steps in the hall slower, his gaze drifting far beyond the classroom walls. Rumors whispered of plans abroad, of family decisions, of opportunities waiting across the ocean. Ethan brushed them aside, convincing himself it could not be true. Then one morning Noah was gone. No farewell, no letter, no trace beyond the echo of his name on attendance sheets. It was as if the tide had risen overnight and carried him away, leaving the shore empty. Ethan sat in class, staring at the vacant chair beside him. The wood was smooth, the surface scratched with years of use, yet it looked unbearably bare without Noah's presence. Graduation came, marked with songs, cheers, and flashing cameras. Students wore leis of flowers, their laughter filling the gym like birds taking flight. Ethan smiled when needed, walked when told, but inside he was hollow. During the ceremony, he glanced to his side. The chair reserved for Noah stood empty, draped with silence. It became a shadow burned into Ethan's memory, a reminder of absence more powerful than any presence. Afterward, he wandered to Tumen Bay. The beach was alive with sounds, the crash of waves, the chatter of tourists, the soft swish of palm fronds in the wind. He found a bench facing the sea, its surface cool against his skin. The place where they had once sat together now felt too wide. He looked out at the horizon, at the endless blue stretching toward America, and imagined Noah somewhere beyond it. Tears came without warning. They fell softly, mixing with the salt of the sea breeze, blurring the horizon before his eyes. He let them fall, each drop heavy with the weight of years. The promise they had made as children echoed faintly, almost like a song heard from far away. It felt both near and unreachable, a thread stretched thin across oceans. History continued its march. Guam stood at the edge of the Pacific, a place touched by war decades earlier, a place reshaped by new influences, by soldiers, by travelers, by students leaving for distant lands. Families spoke of opportunities abroad, of education in American cities, of futures carved in faraway classrooms. Noah had become part of that movement, swept into the current of history. Ethan remained on the island, holding fragments of memory like seashells in his hand. The beach grew quieter as the sun sank low. The water reflected shades of orange and pink, waves curling gently before dissolving on the shore. Children played nearby, their laughter soft, their footsteps pattering against wet sand. For a moment, the world looked tender again, even in its emptiness. Ethan closed his eyes, breathing in the rhythm of the tide. He thought of the mango tree, of the chocolate that melted in the sun, of the hand that once trembled while holding his own. The images came like lanterns glowing faintly in the dark. They were memories now, but still alive in him. The pain of absence lingered, sharp and raw. Yet beneath it lay something steady. The bond, though stretched by distance, had not disappeared. It lived in memory, in the promise of the sea's endless return to the shore. Night fell slowly, stars scattering above the bay. The bench grew cool beneath him, the air filled with the hush of waves. Ethan sat quietly, allowing the silence to cover him like a blanket. In that moment, even with tears drying on his cheeks, peace touched him. The sea whispered, the palm leaves rustled, and the island held. It began with the sound of music carried through the warm night air. The Torres group had returned to Guam in full strength, bringing lights, banners, and the kind of celebration that drew the whole island into its glow. The hotel hall in Tumen was covered with golden fabric, chandeliers hanging like drops of fire from the ceiling. Outside, the palms swayed, and the sea sent in a steady rhythm, a muffled song that mixed with the laughter inside. Ethan entered with Caleb, Lucas, and Marcus. The friends moved together through the crowd, each step slow, each face touched by curiosity. Yet for Ethan the night was different. His chest felt heavy. The sound of clinking glasses was sharp, the hum of voices almost too much. He carried memories that pressed against the edges of the celebration, memories of another time when silence had followed promises. The years had passed, but the weight of absence remained. Noah had left without a word. Ethan had waited, confused, angry, searching for explanations that never came. Time had shifted, friends had changed, Guam itself had moved through history, but the space Noah left behind had stayed. Now the return was real. The Torres group banner stretched across the stage, shining under the lights. The family name carried a legacy on the island, shaped by decades of business and the scars of war. Stories of survival during the battles of 1944 still echoed in the community, when villages had been burned and rebuilt, when families had been displaced and then returned. Noah's return seemed to mirror that same rhythm: destruction, absence, and now rebuilding. Ethan stood near the tables, watching the room move in colors and shadows. Then the moment came. The crowd shifted, the lights dimmed slightly, and at the far end of the hall he saw him. Noah appeared different now. His steps were confident, his suit fitted perfectly, his smile measured and calm. He looked like someone who had walked through cities far away, someone shaped by years of success, someone distant from the boy Ethan had once known. But when their eyes met, the hall fell silent in Ethan's mind. The music dulled, the chatter blurred, and all that remained was the line of vision that crossed the glittering air. Light from the chandeliers refracted, scattering across crystal glasses, catching on Noah's face. It was a sight sharp as lightning, sudden as the rush of waves against the rocks of Two Lovers' Point. Ethan's heart pounded. The beat was uneven, faster than the rhythm of the band playing nearby. He felt anger rise, the memory of betrayal pushing up like salt in a wound. At the same time, something softer stirred, a longing he thought he had buried. Both feelings collided, and his breath grew unsteady. Noah's expression was calm, yet the look in his eyes reached past the polished surface. It carried a flicker, a recognition that time could not erase. Ethan felt pulled into it, unwilling yet unable to look away. The hall erupted in applause as the host spoke, but Ethan barely noticed. The light swirled from one corner to another, reflections moving like water across walls. Every sound seemed to echo too loudly. The sharp clink of a spoon against glass, the burst of laughter from a nearby group, the creak of chairs shifting, all of it pressed against his ears. And still, in the center of it all, Noah's gaze remained fixed on him. Ethan tried to steady himself. He thought of the years in between, of Guam's changes, of the island recovering from storms that swept across its shores. Typhoons had torn roofs away, yet houses had been rebuilt. Streets had flooded, yet families had returned to clean and restore. The island had learned to endure. Perhaps he too had endured. But facing Noah again felt like standing in the eye of another storm. The group of friends around Ethan laughed, raising glasses, unaware of the storm within him. Caleb leaned closer, but Ethan only nodded without speaking. The words stuck. He could not explain what it felt like, to see someone both familiar and foreign, to feel drawn and yet pushed away all at once. Time moved strangely that night. Minutes stretched like hours, the glow of candles bending into long trails. The chandeliers swayed slightly, and the golden fabric caught the light, shimmering as though alive. Ethan's chest rose and fell with heavy rhythm. His mind replayed the day of graduation, the empty chair, the silence that had followed. The memory struck him now as it had been, sharp, unyielding. And yet, under the weight of anger, another current flowed. He remembered laughter on the shore, promises whispered under palm trees, the comfort of sitting side by side in silence. Those memories returned like soft waves, overlapping with the sound of the band's gentle music. The two currents clashed, leaving him unsteady. The moment between them passed quickly in the eyes of the crowd, but for Ethan it lingered. The look Noah gave him, steady and direct, seemed to carry words unspoken. It felt like the tide pulling at his feet, impossible to ignore. Later, as the evening unfolded, the hall filled with toasts and music. The Torres family spoke of their plans, of new projects that would bring growth to the island, of honoring the history of their people. The words of resilience and renewal filled the air, echoing Guam's own journey through centuries of change. Ethan listened faintly, his focus still tied to the meeting of eyes earlier. The night drew on. Candles burned low, glasses emptied, laughter softened. Outside, the ocean kept its steady rhythm, the waves breaking against the reef with a hushed crash, pulling back with a long sigh. Inside, the music slowed, the notes lingering like fading light. Ethan stood once more at the edge of the hall, looking out through the glass windows toward the sea. His reflection stared back at him, but behind it he saw the dark horizon, where the water stretched endlessly. He thought of history, of the island that had been claimed by many yet remained true to itself. He thought of himself, of the part of him that had waited despite everything. Behind him, the hall was still alive with movement. But Ethan let his eyes rest on the horizon, letting the sound of the waves calm his restless heart. The night was not about answers. It was only the beginning of questions. And when the last note of music faded, the hall settled into quiet. The chandeliers glowed softly, the golden fabric shimmered once more, and the world seemed to pause at sunset. It began with a story told in the quiet of the evening. Caleb spoke of his own love, one that had once burned brightly but ended without a clear farewell. His voice carried the weight of memory, gentle but marked with loss. The sound was steady, yet beneath it lay the rhythm of a heart still unfinished. Ethan listened closely, each word falling like drops of water onto still sand. The story mirrored something inside him. It was not only Caleb's past he heard, but also the reflection of his own. When silence followed, Ethan felt the echo stay within. He thought of Noah, of years lost, of promises that had stretched like fragile threads across oceans. Caleb's story became a lantern, showing that love was not measured by how much of the world one could hold, but by how deeply one held a single person. In that light, Ethan understood. Noah had never needed everything. He had only needed him. The sea carried a soft wind that night, its breath salty and cool. The waves rolled in with a hush, broke with a sigh, then retreated with a gentle pull. The sound seemed to speak in rhythms older than memory, as if reminding them that all things moved in cycles, that departures could circle back into returns. Ethan walked to the beach at dusk. The sky above Guam stretched wide, painted in red and gold, streaked with violet where clouds drifted slowly. The air was warm, yet the breeze from the water cooled his skin. Sand shifted beneath his feet with a soft crunch, tiny grains sticking to his shoes. In the distance, Noah waited, his figure outlined against the glow of the setting sun. The space between them felt heavy, filled with unsaid words and years of silence. Ethan's chest tightened, anger and longing mixing together. He remembered the empty seat on graduation day, the night spent on the bench at Tumen Bay, the unanswered letters. The memories returned sharp, like glass shards hidden beneath soft sand. He wanted to ask why, wanted to demand an explanation, but his voice remained trapped within. Noah's eyes, once cold and guarded, now held a light of vulnerability. He stepped closer, his presence quiet but strong. The sea wind carried his breath, uneven and raw. Then the words broke free. All those years, he said, he had only waited. The confession was simple, yet it struck with the weight of time itself. Ethan's heart pounded. The sound filled his ears, louder than the waves, louder than the wind. He felt the ache of old wounds rising, but also the warmth of something tender beneath them. The world seemed to narrow to this single moment, where past and present touched. The sun dipped lower, its edge touching the horizon. Light spilled across the water, turning the waves into sheets of fire. Seabirds called in the distance, their wings slicing through air heavy with salt. The whole island seemed to hold its breath, as if listening. Noah reached out. His hand trembled, yet it did not withdraw. Fingers brushed against Ethan's, hesitant at first, then closing with quiet strength. The touch was not smooth. It carried years of absence, the roughness of regret. Yet within it lay a plea, a hope that had survived silence. Ethan felt the warmth of that grip. It was fragile, but it was real. His heart swayed between anger and forgiveness, between fear and desire. He could not yet answer. The weight of the past pressed too deeply, the uncertainty of the future stretched too far. He stood still, caught in the tide of decision, unable to move forward, yet unable to let go. The horizon blazed in final colors. Red deepened to crimson, orange melted into gold, and the first hints of night spread across the upper sky. Waves struck the shore with steady rhythm, each one breaking with a soft crash, each one leaving foam that faded quickly. The sound filled the silence between them, a song older than their promises. Ethan's mind turned to history. He thought of Guam's own story, of colonizers who came and went, of wars that scarred the land, of families torn apart and brought back together. The island had always endured, reshaping itself with each tide of change. Perhaps love, too, carried that rhythm, breaking, mending, breaking again, yet never disappearing. They stood together in the glow of sunset, two shadows on sand, hands held but futures unknown. The question hung in the air, unanswered yet alive. Was this the beginning of a new chapter, or only the closing of an unfinished one? The sea offered no reply. It only whispered in waves, carrying secrets away into the vastness. The horizon swallowed the last of the sun, leaving the sky washed in soft purple. Stars began to appear, shy and distant, while the air cooled gently. Ethan closed his eyes. He felt the tremor in Noah's hand, the warmth of skin against his own, the breath of evening brushing across his face. For now, that was enough. Not resolution, not certainty, but the quiet truth that they stood together under the same sky once more. And as night settled over the island, the world grew calm. The waves kept their steady song, the palms swayed in rhythm, and the promise of tomorrow drifted softly in the air. The moment ended not with finality, but with peace, as if the ocean itself wished them rest.